let's get to it. How to make a great sounding movie every time. There's a very basic set of principles. There's a lot of details within each principle, but let's just go through them one by one. You gotta record clean dialogue. This means you gotta use the best microphone you have, like a shotgun microphone or a wireless microphone, like a lavalier, like this one here. But basically you wanna get clean dialogue. This means the best signal to noise ratio. So you want the microphone as close as possible to the actors. And you want the background noise as low as possible. Okay, and if you want to use limiting, that might be fine on the recording device, but don't go too far with the limiter. Always know what it sounds like. But basically, you want the background noise to remain consistent, okay? And when we get into dialogue editing, like the full thing, that's a completely full subject, so we can't really cover it here. But basically, when you start out with clean dialogue and lots of coverage, you're going to have a much better editing session. And by coverage, I simply mean you're going to record production dialogue, room tone. Sometimes room tone is known as fill. Some cool person called it fill at some point. And fill is just like if you have handles, if I start recording my audio and nothing happens for 10 seconds because the actor didn't do anything because they were instructed to not do anything, I've already got 10 seconds of fill, so I might actually use that in place of actually recording 30 to 60 seconds of room tone. Okay, so you got production dialogue, room tone, and wild lines. Now, wild lines are chunks of dialogue recorded on set but off camera. See, the beauty of it is the actor's already in character, so they don't, you know, they've been practicing it for a while and stuff like that, so they don't have to actually remember their character when they go in post-production, like if they're going to do ADR. Here's point number 2. After you've recorded proper coverage of dialogue, select the best dialogue of all tracks that you have to work with. So if you have it recorded properly on set, you'll have the main track, which is generally channel 1, recorded as loud as possible without distortion. And then channel 2, 10, 15 decibels lower, just in case channel 1 peaks, channel 2 is usable. So you're going to select the best of all dialogue tracks. Clean up the dialogue. Step number 3. Make sure the dialogue is equalized. And I have a standard equalization on some cards that I created. And these cards are sound design cards. I have 2 of them, front and back, with sound maps and everything. The beauty of these cards is you sit them in front of your computer and you basically follow the sound map and follow the guidelines of getting perfect sound every time. So I want to make them, you know, cheap and available. I do have them on some other videos, so if you just want to grab screenshots, that's fine. If you want to actually purchase the cards, I'd appreciate it, because that just helps me be able to afford to keep making products like this. But anyways, you want to equalize, compress with modest compression. My equalization is getting rid of the lower mids and doing a high pass filter and possibly doing some upper middle emphasis. You're going to want to add some room tone to make sure that when you do picture cuts back and forth, over the shoulder, 2 shots, group shots, close-ups, the background sound sounds the same. I have videos on this on my channel. And one more important thing is cheat the shouts and whispers. If somebody screams, bring them down a bit. If somebody whispers, bring them up a bit, so that it's cheated. Because the dynamic range of a feature film or short film or whatever is maybe 30 decibels in total from lowest level to highest level. Mix your Foley to suit the dialogue. Dialogue first, Foley second. Then ambient effects. You don't want your ambient effects to cover the dialogue or cover the Foley effects. The ambient effects, after your dialogue and Foley are mixed, you bring them up to suit your taste. Where do they actually sound good? If they're not, if they're going to cover dialogue and Foley effects, then you want to bring them down. Number 5, establish the loudest sound effects. On your master level output, you're going to want to see the master peak at -2 at most. I even suggest -5 sometimes, but -2 is the absolute. You don't want to hit 0. Mix music around dialogue and sound effects. Once you have your dialogue, then your Foley effects, then your ambient effects, then your loudest sound effects. That's where you start to mix the music. Now your composer can help you, because your composer can actually go, I gotta be quiet in this part, I gotta be loud in this part. Number 7, tweak each stem with volume automation. So you go to all your stems, you got your dialogue stem, your music stem, your sound effects stem, depending on how you order your stems, and you're going to go to each track of each stem and tweak it. So that simply means that if you've got music, dialogue, and sound effects happening in one particular scene, and you notice that one sentence of an actor is just a little too low, you can just take that one sentence and boost it up a bit. In another scene, if you've got like music that's just a little too loud for that particular part, you can take the music down only for that part. So volume automation is like fader movements. Eliminate any red peaks. If you see any red peaks happening at all, you got to click on the little number. If it says, you know, +2 or something like that with red meaning distortion, you got to take that down. So on my program, and most programs that I know, you just basically click on the red part and it goes away, but then you have to go and take down that peak. So the one way to do it is volume automation, to take down the peaks, to find out where it's going to peak and just take down the peak a little bit. And a limiter on the main output bus. Number 10, measure your dialogue stem with a loudness meter. I personally use the Orban loudness meter. I take my dialogue stem only, render it as the full, the full project. Open that up into Orban and get the reading. So I want to know how loud it is. Step number 11, listen on 5 different sound systems in 5 different rooms, big rooms, small rooms. If you have a soundtrack that translates well on at least 5 different sound systems, this is called comparative referencing. What that means is simply that you're listening on as many different sound systems as possible. Number 12, do a cinema simulation. So I trademarked the term CinemaSim. Unless anybody out there has trademarked that term, I trademarked it. So if you did, well, we'll have a discussion about that. I've been working on this for quite a few years, came up with this term, CinemaSim. CinemaSim is simply, you have a reverb that's 0.85 seconds. I have a good reference for why that is. It's just under a second. And because it goes through this equalization curve called the X curve, it is a warm reverb. Basically, over time, through many different cinemas, it was observed that there was a 3 decibel, like an average of 3 decibel per octave drop on the high end and 3 decibel drop on the low end at 63 hertz. So we have 63 hertz and 2 kilohertz where you have this kind of drop off. And everything else is more or less flat. It's not flat. I mean, there's really, this curve has a tolerance range itself above and below the line, but the averages seem to be, through this development of the X curve, the droop on the high and the droop in the low. If you need help with your sound check, let me know. I'm actually offering discount rates for independent filmmakers. Email me at info@beforeyoushow.com or bacontrees@yahoo.ca, and we can work something out. I really just want to help you out. I do like to be compensated for some work I do, but I won't gouge you. I promise I will not gouge you. I will work with you and help you make a better soundtrack, or you can simply just take all the principles I've just explored and make yourself a better soundtrack. If you have questions, please put them on below the video, and I will answer them. Please subscribe, and as well, I just want to keep making good, helpful, useful videos. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much for stopping by Bacon Trees.